We just recently picked it up on the Coronal, which is how we can debunk some of these narratives that are out right now. If you can't answer a question simply, what's your real agenda? We don't know where it came from, and we don't know what's going to do during its perihelion. It started to change the morphic resonance of the information conscious field of our solar system. We are at a deeper level of understanding as to reality once we go to this quantum level, the base field of energy, information, and consciousness. On the 21st of October, we had this gigantic coronal mass ejection directly towards Atlas. The magnetic field's all twisted up. They have these magnetic vortices that spiral out to space. It's going to short circuit whatever the normal energy flow is. They're demolishing the White House, like a rebuilding of America. The Earth is like reorganizing and moving. These archetypal influences are just manifesting themselves. I just see this as a big upgrade for humanity. Some sort of catalyst may be needed to really trigger this. A lot of people are seeing 3i Atlas as being the catalyst. I don't think it's aliens, but if it is aliens or technological craft, what is the most likely scenario? We have the data that we have, and then we have all the data that we wish we had. So we only picked it up July 1st, and then we were able to spot it on some of our earlier all-sky pictures, basically from I think April, May. So that pushed it a little further back in terms of getting coordinates effectively. And then we basically lost track of it October 3rd or so, maybe a little bit later than that because of the glare of the sun. We just recently picked it up on the Coronal, which is how we can kind of debunk some of these narratives that are out right now. The other way to debunk them is you just do a little bit of digging and you find out that these people reference this professor from Brazil who discovers pulsing the Fibonacci sequence. You look at the guy up and he doesn't exist. So there's no record of these people. So it's not that difficult, but we don't know where it came from, and we don't know what's going to do during its perihelion, its closest approach to the sun, because that's when you'd perform a maneuver to redirect if you were something that wanted to redirect, like alien craft or technology. And I actually just released a video exploring the possibility of, okay, well, if it is aliens or technological craft, what is the most likely scenario? And applying a little bit of logic, and if you understand our solar system, the resource distribution in terms of also where you'd want to have territory across the solar system to establish dominance, really we're talking the chessboard at the interplanetary scale. Flying in and then going right to Earth is the stupidest thing you could do. As far as I know, based off of my assessment, it really doesn't make sense. That's the thing. So you can look at this from a variety of angles. We have the Coronal data showing it moving along its trajectory as expected without any additional acceleration or deacceleration. But we have this unknown of the future. I think it's a very low probability, but it is a useful platform to explore this stuff. But it's really just about how we talk about things. I feel like one of the bigger stories here is just how we communicate with others, because throughout my video I just released, I was like, guys, just right from the get-go, this is a video where we explore what this possibility is. It's speculatory, but maybe that plays out. Again, I don't think it is. Whereas some people that are really big on this, you mentioned this Harvard professor guy, I listened to a clip with him. They asked him a question because one of these fake conspiracy things that was floating around was that all of a sudden multiple objects were following Atlas. They had detached from it, and there was a whole fleet of them now. And people don't know what they don't know. So the news anchor was like, is that true? And he didn't answer the question. He just circled around it like a politician. And it's we have observations. We can say, no, we don't have any observations of that. If it is an alien technological craft or something, perhaps that could happen. But as of this moment, we don't have that. So I don't know what the problem is with people just to accurately convey and how they structure their language so we see the order of operations. So we don't just jump to conclusions. We can say, okay, well, we don't have this, but maybe this is there, and that's the next step, and da-da-da. And I don't know. I think it's just a glimpse more so into the the structure of people's brains, their thinking, their mindset, their philosophy, their programming. I personally, and I've said this from the beginning, and I actually really haven't changed my stance at all. I've just explored a bunch of different angles. But right from the very beginning, I said, when this interstellar object entered our system, it started to change the morphic resonance of the information conscious field of our solar system. And you've had a lot of interesting guests talking about these things, so you know exactly what I'm talking about, and same with the audience, right? We are at a deeper level of understanding as to reality once we go to this more informational level and this quantum level, the base field of energy, information, and consciousness. You have something foreign come in and everything already has this resonance and structure in the solar system, it's going to change things. I've been feeling my own changes. People collectively, you probably, like, I think Heather Ensworth and Pam Gregory, I think they're spot on with saying, it's not an interstellar object, it's an interstellar being. Like, what's the consciousness of this? We know there's mineral consciousness, plant consciousness, animal consciousness, right? Different higher dimensional consciousnesses as well, astral going into causal and all these different zones. Like, you can read into Isaac Bentov and his work and many others. And so there's many ways that we can explore this, but this alien angle, I mean, maybe. But that's very materialistic, and so we'll get our answers in the realm of material reality if that is the case. We will see it do a trajectory move, and then we should freak out. And that doesn't mean it's not interesting or exciting. That doesn't mean there's not a lot happening. But I feel, again, with if you can't answer a question simply, then there's just what's your real agenda? Because the people just want a yes or a no, and then context. Or, right? It's just if you're doing this politician circle thing, it just, I don't know, it just rubs me. It's something come on, we should be beyond this. This is we're moving beyond this now. We need to elevate and ascend beyond this low frequency stuff. But I don't know, maybe I shouldn't be so judgmental. Maybe I just get a little fired up.
It's interesting as well, because what you can observe is what you can observe. And I think there's some questions I want to ask you about that. But to your point, it was, I remember reading somewhere that Jung suggested that UFOs were actually projections of the self in some way. And, just considering that there's, like you said, this is a third in 8 years, this interstellar object is moving through the plane that it is moving through, happenstance, sure, okay. But, interestingly, there's an aspect of our mind, our psyche, it's going to have an impact because it's not from where we are. It's interesting because you do speak about that quite a bit, in that we don't know what it is, but we do know it's different, right? And that's all we can deduce for some degree, but it does carry, because there are some really interesting things about it. You said it's quite small from your observations. It's only 50 kilometers across, but actually not to sort of look at it as a gravitational thing, but to look at it more electromagnetically, and that it's actually having quite a significant impact. Can you unpack that for us here?
Yeah, that's a good point, because if it is maximum 50 kilometers across, I mean, hopefully we get better data and we can resolve its size and characteristics to a better degree. And, it's strange that we haven't had any data released from this Mars flyby with NASA and also Chinese and the UAE.
Ask you about that.
So there's some weird stuff.
Not getting it anyway?
There's some weird stuff happening, folks. Okay, so it's not just okay, everything's totally normal, it's a comet, and go back to sleep forever. There's some weird stuff happening, but it's at the same time, if it's not that big in the context of a planet or something, then its gravitational effect is going to be fairly minimal. Doesn't mean it's maybe insignificant, but probably it's not the main factor by far. Then you can go to the realm of electromagnetism, which is a much stronger force, tremendously stronger force. It's a trillion, something like that, or even a million trillion times trillion million. I mean, it's insane. It's 10 to 36 zeros. You can look it up. I mean, there's certain ways of quantifying it, but that's one of the main ways. And that's the next level. You get a lot of understanding there, because I was forecasting back in late July, once I started to get an understanding what this thing was. We all were, right, collectively. I was when it makes that superior conjunction with Earth, that perfect alignment, I expect there to be solar activity. Now, I wasn't sure if there was going to be towards Atlas, towards Earth, but just that alignment itself, I was like, we should probably see some enhanced activity. That was my base case. I've been talking about that on the channel. On the 21st of October, we had this gigantic coronal mass ejection, one of the largest of this solar cycle. Most of the big ones have actually happened on the far side of the sun. It's called Earth-facing quiet. It's a little bizarre, but this was one of the top 5, maybe even top 3 big explosions on the sun. I mean, we don't know the size of that flare, but it might have been a double-digit X flare, which is huge. Basically directly towards Atlas. It was a little bit off, a little bit more towards Venus, but the two are close together. Then on the 22nd, we had another big coronal mass ejection. On the 23rd, we had another one. On the 25th, earlier, so a little bit later than 24 hours later, a 4th one. And then we've had even like a 5th and a 6th, but they started getting smaller. So we had the biggest event right when it hit that alignment, and then they decrease in frequency, and now they're kind of simmering down. So that is very likely probably a electromagnetic interaction where you have, a sunspot itself, right? You have a sunspot creates these explosions. The magnetic field's all twisted up. They have these magnetic vortices that spiral out to space. So if you have a big plasma thing, has some nucleus, but has all this plasma around it, because gravity is helping the plasma hold in place, right? That's where gravity comes in for the most part. Normally there's this empty space there, and that magnetic field can just kind of fade out like this. And then all of a sudden you have this like big thing show up, right? It's going to literally short circuit whatever the normal energy flow is. And that could potentially, cause an explosion. If the sunspot's there, it's going to, or at least that's what I was estimating, and it did. If there's no sunspots, you're probably not going to get it. But then I think the layer below that, which actually gives you a lot more understanding, though you have to like let go, and we know a lot less about this, but at the same time you get a lot more out of it, which is kind of interesting, is that informational consciousness level, and just speaking about simply resonance, frequency, vibration, and these words that we can use are really inadequate to explain what's happening. They are the limiting factor, and this is where just like meditating into that comes into play. Because what is like the resonance, the frequency, the unique vibration of this? It was formed who knows where. It could be hundreds or millions of light years away, traveling for billions of years, and then it comes into our system with its very unique but like pretty structured resonance sequence with the planets and the Earth and the Moon and the Sun and everything else. That's probably going to trigger something from the sun, because it's just simply out of resonance, and maybe those solar flares help bring it into resonance temporarily with our system. So there's like the different levels to think about, and yeah, gravity is probably the least informative, and electromagnetism is the second most informative, I would say. And then this other layer, which requires you to let go, because we don't really have science on it. Not like we have for a lot of things, like, good, solid, we had the mathematical equations. We don't really have that for this whole quantum informational stuff. It's just mostly ideas and, thought pioneers and thought experimentation, meditation, and more.
There's an interesting thought experiment in my head, which is like, well, there's going to be a future where something like this introduces itself like through our galaxy, and then we just fly out and go meet it. Like, that's going to happen at some point with human technological advancement. And I just found that really interesting. It's like, we don't know much about it. And I was like, there's going to be a future, like a couple of thousand years, maybe not even that long, at the rate of technological advancement, where it's like, let's just go check out what that is, and there'll be a couple of people that will just fly out, like we take a flight to Hawaii and just come back, and then just be like, oh yeah, that was great. The beaches there are amazing. So yeah, it's interesting thinking about even just the time and era that we're in, and when some of this is happening, because also like, to your point, you said we don't know where it's come from, but we also don't know when, right? Like when an object like this was formed, like it could very much be something that's incredibly ancient, and likely is, moving through. And I just find that like that's fascinates me a little bit in terms of it's really old. It's been potentially hurtling through space, potentially. And yet it's at this time that it's made its way through our galaxy of all places and where it heads to after this. Very, very interesting thought process. I wanted to talk a little bit around sort of what it's been doing because I've been tracking your updates. It's moving, I think, as it starts to approach, and we need to define perihelion if you're open to that. It's approaching 68 kilometers per second, which is pretty fast. But I don't know if that's fast cosmically or not, and maybe you can speak to that. Moving retrograde, it went past Mars. I think it was October 3rd, if I've got my dates right, and Earth October 31st during a supermoon. So that's coming up, and then it's going to hit up Venus in December.
The opposite of that. Venus is the 31st of October, and then Earth will be December 17th for its closest, but it doesn't get that close.
Cool. So can you tell us a little bit around its moving, how fast it's moving, and when you think it's moving past all the places, and what is perihelion, because it's gonna hit that at some point as well.
Yeah, perihelion is just the closest approach to the sun, and helion means sun, and peri is like close. So that's just an astronomical term, and it'll get within 1.36 astronomical units, unless it does something crazy, right? I mean, you can't rule it out. And, there's benefits to not just immediately ruling that out, because a lot of people will just be like, oh, well, it's not happening. But it's useful to engage in some of these thought experiments. So I stepped into like the past week or so, like, okay, well, let's entertain the idea that it is something. Where would it go? It probably wouldn't go to Earth. That doesn't really make sense, but the Jupiter system makes a lot of sense. All the moons, they have lots of water. Ganymede even has a magnetic field. It's one of the few objects in our solar system with a magnetic field. The only other ones are the sun and like a few planets, not all the planets. Venus doesn't have a magnetic field. Mars doesn't have a magnetic field, but Mercury, Earth, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. The TNOs, as far as you know, don't have them, but maybe. This is a moon, though. It's bigger than Mercury. It's bigger than Pluto, bigger than our moon. So in that process of like, well, if they are an interplanetary colonizing force, the Jupiter system would be the best spot. So you should probably link the video I just released in the show notes for this so people can watch that if they want, because I go into all the details and I don't want to repeat myself there.
No, of course. And you've got visual aids and stuff in your videos as well, which are really helpful. So I'll link it in for sure.
Yeah, but Jupiter's kind of like the key spot, I would think. I mean, I'm just human, but I would think that there would be a colonizing force that would want to go. And the orbit was set up such that it passed very close to Mars, also a key colonizing planet, right? Like we're looking at Mars. So they did a very close flyby Mars and then also super close flyby Jupiter. So if that was the intent, it like, boom, it got it perfect. And you also have to think about if you're traveling through deep space, you want to use almost all your fuel to get there, because every single extra little nudge on your velocity will get you there that much faster. So you want to use very little fuel at the end to get to your final destination. So Jupiter is only slightly off from the approach of 3i Atlas, what they call this Oberth maneuver, when you either add or subtract to your velocity when you're in that slingshot position around the sun, the perihelion, you would, if it's close, if you already lined it up pretty close, you'd only need a little bit of fuel to do that redirect. And so it makes sense. Like that possibility is feasible under the current situation. So that's there. That got me thinking, that whole thought experiment, which I mean, again, I don't think it's aliens, but maybe. So I did the thought experiment. That led me to then think, okay, well, where did it come from? And I was like, you know what? I know that Barnard star is very close to our system. We have Alpha Centauri, which is a binary system. They have Proxima, the third star that's a little further away. That's not the direction, but I was like, where is Barnard star in the sky? So I looked it up on Stellarium, and Barnard star is in a Fucus, and 3i Atlas came in from the border of Sagittarius and Capricorn. And Barnard star is hurtling towards Earth. It's the fastest star as far as I know. I think the fastest that we've detected headed towards the sun. And it's not that off from the ecliptic plane. So it actually, like in the context, like it could have been from Barnard star if we're playing this game, this speculation game. And based off of 60 kilometers per second, that gives a travel time at that velocity of 30,000 years. So it's now kind of in the realm of possibility. It's like nearby. It's out of, distance that's not too far. And there's planets that we found with Barnard's star. There's even the idea that it's an ultra-wide binary companion for our sun. And this is what drives the great year, the Yuga cycle, and the precession of the equinoxes, because the sun is moving on an elliptical orbit. The two, right, have these shared elliptical orbits. You've probably talked to some of these people that have discussed this on your channel. Walter Crudenton is one guy, and Sri Yukteswar, the guru for Yogananda, he wrote, he just wrote it just as fact in his book, nearly more than 100 years ago, The Holy Science. It's a good book. So I've been investigating all that too. That's where it's useful to learn this stuff, because it all connects. So that's why I knew about Barnard's star. And I was like, yeah, I think that, is that close? I looked it up, it's nearly exactly the same location. Close enough that it's okay, this is interesting because it's only 6 light years away. So these sort of thought experiments, whether or not you think it's the case, lead you to interesting avenues that divulge more information and details and things to kind of think about and kind of give up some of the secrets of the universe. So my base case, if you want to call it that, is that, again, this is a unique object that has this very rich interstellar and unique consciousness to it, as everything does. But this is really foreign, and I only feel really good stuff from it because it's performed a lot of these maneuvers and alignments and stuff in the constellation of Virgo, which is very much connected to the earth and to healing and to facing your shadow. And that's been 100% my journey over the past 2 months. And I did a 6-day fast and then a certain protocol during and after. And I'm so much healthier now, solved some pretty significant problems, pretty much overnight. Oh my God, is that possible? Well, yeah, it is. So I did a little mushroom trip and I connected to this thing. So I have felt only good, benevolent, healing and consciousness expanding energy and vibes from this. So that's what, I default to thinking more along those lines than these kind of other zones, but I play with all of them.
Hey there, inspired souls and lumen beings. I wanted to take a moment to thank all of you that are subscribed to this podcast. Everything you see around here is powered and empowered by your subscription to this channel. Thank you so much for your incredible love and your support. And to all of you that haven't yet subscribed, and actually some of you think you are subscribed, we know this from some of the community members now, actually think you're subscribed but you're not. So if I'm saying the word subscribe when I'm saying the word subscribe, the subscribe button below is lighting up in the colors of the Inspired Evolution. Please do take a moment. If you can see that button, you're not yet subscribed, please hit that subscribe button, hit the bell notification icon, join the community, join the movement, spreading love, positivity and wisdom like this around the planet together. Thank you so much in advance for your loving support. And on the note of loving support and community and coming together, we have the Inspired Evolution Community Circle, affectionately known as The Circle, where guests like Stefan Burns once a month come along and you get to ask your questions directly of these guests. We gather for meditations, community sharings, breathwork, there's a yoga, there's a lot of good stuff happening inside The Circle. Stefan's coming to feature as a guest shortly, so it'd be awesome if you would like to join and ask your own questions directly of Stefan on some of the shifts and changes that you're wanting to know more about. You can ask your questions directly, and so many guests coming on once a month to answer your questions. I step out of the way and you get to interact directly with them, and such an incredibly beautiful heart-based community, even if I can say so myself, touch wood. And so if you feel the call, join us. We'd love to welcome you on the inside. inspiredevolution.com/circle. Link in the description below. We'd love to welcome you on the inside. The other, while we're in the speculative space, it's also because NASA issued an alert for astronomers, amateur and professional, to watch 3i Atlas between November and December specifically. But then also, to your point earlier, they themselves just went completely quiet. What? It's just just makes you want to go, wait, why aren't you saying anything, and why are you asking us to watch? Doesn't that? What your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm exactly in agreement with you. I don't think it was a bad idea though. Like we have this weird thing flying through, and they used I think what network they could. So it's the International Asteroid Warning Network, something like that. And we don't think it's going to hit us because it would have to do a really serious like maneuver to hit us. But if that's the network that you can tap to all of a sudden get a lot of people to track these things, then it just makes sense that you pull that lever, even though it's maybe we should have a international like interstellar watch program or something, right? That'd be slightly better. But I think they just utilize the resource that they had, which is this community, and now it'll mobilize a lot of people. And we should be doing that to track as many things and as we can and get as much data. But yeah, everything is, I mean, yeah, we had this government shutdown in the United States, and at the same time, while the country's like crippled effectively from that. I mean, everyday life is fine, but for a lot of people, it's not. They're demolishing the White House, like a rebuilding of America. We're in this Pluto return, the Neptune return of the Civil War, the triple Uranus into Gemini sequence. You've talked about all this with Pam and others on the channel. So it's like really transformative stuff. And this is adding into all that. And it was actually the perfect slot in because we had this near great conjunction between Saturn and Neptune in July. There's a lot of stuff happening kind of related to that as well. We had that big mega quake, magnitude 8.8, tons of earthquake activity this year. Lots of solar activity, especially now. I was thinking that was going to be the case. But there was like this cool off period in the astrology and just some of the alignments and configurations for the fall. And then 3i Atlas came in and made it now super dynamic. And then we had the final conjunction in February. So 6 months ago, it was like, okay, we can finally breathe this fall, thank God, because it's going to be like water trines and it's all going to be good. And then this thing
Next minute.
yeah. So it tracks though, because that is the energy. Saturn and Neptune. Saturn is this manifester, but Neptune's the dissolver. They apply to each other. So Saturn applying to Neptune is like, what are we going to manifest into our reality from all these ideas that we've generated and created over, if we use one orbital revolution, 164 years. Meanwhile, Neptune's like, I'm going to dissolve all your boundaries and limits so we can actually then manifest this stuff into reality. So we're seeing this blurred line between interstellar and interplanetary with this object coming in. And we're seeing at least right now in the United States, and there's so much more important things happening, but we're seeing like the White House get deconstructed and rebuilt with private money as the government shut down. And then we're getting, tons of earthquakes, which is showing that the earth is like reorganizing and moving. And you could go on and on, but these archetypal influences are just manifesting themselves. They're making themselves known. It's like just in again, like that morphic resonance field. And this interstellar object, not only does it modify that, it's also very much symbolic of that as well, which is what's so fascinating about it when you look at it from that perspective.
Yeah, because it was Rupert Sheldrake who coined the term morphic fields when he came, and he came on the podcast, and it was fascinating. And the place where it actually started for him was he was contemplating the sun, and his TED Talks were actually banned for a while there, and I think recently they've been re-released, but might even have to link them into the description of the show notes. But he talked about like the sun having consciousness. Yeah, that was where it having a morphic field and us having morphic field and memories was his big trigger. Like, where do we actually draw memories from? Because you can lobotomize people and take out parts of the brain that you think memories are housed in, and actually they can still draw memories from different parts of their brain. And I'm like, huh? And so his conjecture was actually that we actually have a field that actually we draw like information from, and we happen to be the right energetic lock and key for our field, in which we can download the information that's like our memories and return back the information that we need. And it's like almost like a vault that we carry. And then we got a bit speculative, but we sort of thought maybe that's how psychics work as well, because they've got like a master key or like something they they can sort of, I can go into someone else's Akashic records or whatever you want to call them, or I don't know. But it was a very fascinating conversation. But interestingly, with incredibly profound body of work that he's got there as well, and talking about the sun sending out, I just want to go back to the point where you're like saying the sun sending out coronal mass injections. What are coronal mass injections for the layperson? Because I don't fully understand them myself. And like the electromagnetism that you were describing as well as this object is moving through, and like you mentioned this lightly before, but like data information, we don't fully understand this realm, but it is quite interesting as a thought experiment to think about what's actually happening there. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so it's like they're data and information from far reaches of the universe being uploaded to the sun. Like that's exactly, if you have this stronger gradient, then you're going to have stronger information flow between them. And you were calling them coronal mass injections, and I find that interesting because they're known as coronal mass ejections, like from the sun. But
See, this is why we need you to clear it up.
Well, no, because it works just the same, because this is a coronal mass ejection from the sun and now a plasma injection to 3i Atlas. So, right, it's just about like your perspective shift. If anyone's read Ender's Game, it's a really good book, sci-fi book where they train these kids to be like tactical geniuses because there's this alien threat. And they have this maze where they're floating around in space and they're fighting each other with like, little laser guns, whatever. And all of them are approaching it from this horizontal perspective because they're floating. And then one day they're like, wait, this is like kind of limiting us, because they're going in with this big body target and they keep getting shot. Then Ender is like, wait, let's go in and like just switch our perspective. So now it's below us because you're in space, you're floating. So it's below us. And what they did is they would have their feet then like this, and they would have their guns shooting down their body. So like, this is my body, here's a gun. So they have a very tiny target, right? And so all of a sudden they totally changed the game just by flipping their perspective, and they didn't have these large targets to hit anymore. So this is like one like little plot thing in the story. It's really quite fascinating. And then there's a whole bunch of other books, and it got really actually quite deep and like philosophical. But that's kind of like, I feel like where we are right now, we need to like do this, like just complete perspective shift. And we're right now, like maybe a lot of people are like flailing horizontally through like the laser maze. It's like, we need to like flip our feet forward, and we need to like level up a little bit. So yeah, I think, and so for, Rupert Sheldrake, I mean, he probably pulled that information from the morphic field, right? That was the thing that he was meant to do, and bring that into awareness and to take the heat for that. But I have no doubt that in like 50, 100 years, people are going to be like, clapping and applauding him for bringing some of this awareness to just a larger audience and making it more well known. It's been talked about for a while, though. There's a Russian guy, I think it's Chizensky or Chevetsky, something like that, Alexander, who was talking about all this stuff with the sun, how it affects biology, consciousness, society, civilization, and more, going back to like the early 1900s. And some of these ideas he put out, he was like 21, 20, 25. I mean, it was like incredible how young he was and how profound. But again, he just hyper focused at like a young age and specialized and was given this gift and just shared it. And so it's not like we've not known these things. The ancients have known this stuff. But I just see this as a big like upgrade for humanity. I also see everything as an opportunity. One of the things with astrology is that you have this archetypal expression that needs to manifest itself, but like what octave of expression you choose is up to you. It can be the very low frequency one. So with like Mars, let's say it's like some martial thing, it could be you like getting in a street fight, and that's probably, you don't want to break your arm or something. or it could be you really invigorating your passions with a ton of like that martial energy, drive, and to get it going, and then all of a sudden now you've like burst onto the art scene in New York or something like that, rather than getting mugged outside the bar. So like these different expressions. And so what are the octaves available to us, and like what can we like let's try to get to that really nice one, that really nice note that sounds great, because we see some of these other ones playing out, and it's like, I don't know, I don't like that song. Like I want to jet off to Jamaica, but then now there's a Category 5 hurricane there. So it's like we have our Earth, we have to treat her with respect, responsibility, or stewardship, and like do the right thing, because we can't just like blast off at this moment in time somewhere else. So there's like, we have this gift and opportunity though. Like this is all being presented to us. It's up to us to do it. Instead of just sitting here and listening to this and, oh, it's so cool, and next video, right? It's easy to do, but it's like, let's actually do something, right? What are you actually going to do? Help the community, or, really like start some project that helps a lot of people, or just do interesting research and share that with the world. Like this is a moment and age of inspiration. That's what I've been focusing on a lot, and I'm seeing that reflected with a lot of other people, yourself included. So it's really cool to see that.
Hey there, if you feel like you could be having more of an impact doing what you love, just like Stefan's referring to, this is exactly the kind of mentoring that we offer here at Inspired Evolution. It's mentoring coupled with a mastermind, an incredible community of conscious entrepreneurs. Here's what some of them have to say.
Everything just kind of fell into place, and now I'm on a path that I actually believe in and I'm excited about, because I feel like I'm becoming my best self.
Over those 2 years, I have done so much. I can't believe where I am now. I'm thrilled where I am now. Not only was he a coach, but he became a divine presence in my life.
You can show up to Amrit with all sorts of chaos in your life, and you leave feeling completely centered with some direction that is going to get you results. It's just magic. When you're in coaching with Amrit, you just flow with it all.
I feel that I have access and connection to somebody who is deeply entrenched in my development.
If you're thinking about it, just do it. You won't regret it.
So if you feel the call and are inspired to evolve, book in a call and let's see if this is right for you. amritsandhu.com/call, link in the description below. Back to the episode. As you were saying that, I mean, your whole channel's dedicated to that awareness, and I'll obviously put a link to it in the show notes below for people that want to dive in a little bit deeper. Interestingly, because I watched your episode with Pam. Watching you two's dynamic is so much fun. Both of you kind of agreed that the Earth will kind of be unrecognizable in about 12 months. What are you seeing there? Is it physical? Is it energetic? Is it consciousness? Yeah, well, like, what do you mean by that? And can you maybe bring us into your worldview of where you see us being 12 months from now-ish?
Yeah, well, I will say with you want your titles and thumbnails to be a little fun, and I make sure that I never say anything untrue with them. But you may have to let go of prior like beliefs and programming to see how that's the case. So, the world's always going to be unrecognizable in 12 months because we don't know the future. There's going to be different levels of that, of course. So I will put that disclaimer at the beginning. But I see this. I mean, I don't know if it's going to be physical changes. Like, I mean, if we were, for example, to have a massive volcanic eruption, let's just use that as an example. And I have on my notepad here just some notes. 1458 to 1459, we had a double volcanic eruption that gave us one of the biggest volcanic winters of 1,000 years. And there was another big eruption. 1,000 years, yeah. And there was another big one that occurred in 1454 leading up to it. But the big sulfur spikes that they found in Antarctica were 1458, 1459. We get these things that happen. If that was to happen, like, I don't know, but like if we were to have a massive double or triple whatever volcanic sequence, even just one big one, mountain to caldera, like the Earth would be unrecognizable in 12 months. So that could be a physical, and who's to say this is going to happen? I think it's going to be more societal, civilization level, community level. We're seeing big Earth shifts, but I just get the sense that the Earth is like, you guys got some stuff to work on. I'll give you the big volcanic explosion when things are a little like you guys already have enough on your plate. I feel, the sun is doing all these massive explosions on the far side, Earth facing quiet. I think the sun and the earth are actually, if they are higher consciousness and they're benevolent, they're looking out for us, and they see like, man, they got some. We're going to do everything we can to support them. We're not going to like layer it on even more unless it's like the good tough love type of situation. That's more Saturn anyways. So I think maybe some of these big Earth shifts have already reached their peak crescendo, like that magnitude 8.8 megaquake. I don't know. I'm tracking it all. If the prognosis change, of course, I let people know. But I see this perhaps being more at a civilization level, and I really see it being more consciousness level, because some of these conscious shifts can occur pretty quickly, and it's also about recognizing what's your consciousness and what is something else's consciousness, because people equate right now thoughts with consciousness, and thoughts are just thoughts. It's just your brain's a receiver. It's as simple as that. Your consciousness is beyond, because anyone that's entered into like no mind meditation, even for 10 seconds, no thoughts, knows that there's something beyond that. So when thoughts pop into your head, that's not necessarily you thinking them. It can be a variety of things, your environment. It can be things in your body, right? Your microbiome, let's say maybe parasites, like all these things. Because life has larger fields of consciousness too. So you have your own conscious field, but if you have the humble dandelion, right? All across the world you find dandelions. It has a mega field of consciousness. Same with like the oak tree. So we have these guardian masters on our planet that are here to guide us. There's also, for example, a giant consciousness field for parasites, right? And so at that level, they can put thoughts into your brain. At least this is what I think and have experienced. So, I mean, I've done my whole own journey here, and I've seen how my consciousness has shifted by cleaning my field, and basically just like this is reclaiming my sovereignty. And all of a sudden, like you realize, oh, that's who I am. Not like all this clutter that you were associating your consciousness to. In fact, it wasn't you. So I think we're going to see a big shift with that. And look at how they've attacked a lot of these certain like compounds or herbs that like help you with this. Or we talked about the Great Mushroom Conspiracy, right before we started. That just triggered up. So there's some forces at play. It's like, ooh, okay, like I don't like this. But you just got to keep going forward. And I think that might be the unrecognizable. If I had to put money somewhere, like the awakening of consciousness. And you've had so many guests talk about that, but I see it happening. I feel it happening with myself. So
yeah,
I mean, you're feeling that too, yeah?
Oh, big time. Well, what was present for me as you're sharing it in the conversation as well is earlier in the episode you said the 3i Atlas has been moving through a lot of Virgo's constellation, and yeah, there's a lot of Virgo-like tendencies that are moving through it. And what was in my awareness is that collectively the chart of we're sort of moving through the North node's moving through Pisces, but the South node's moving through Virgo as well. And again, just that healing, like that was what was with my awareness as you were mentioning that, and it started to coalesce in this episode of. Maybe you can tell us about what North and South Node are in your interpretation, and potentially what that could mean if AI Atlas is moving through Virgo, and what that could potentially be doing about having an object in, moving through the space where our South Node is.
Yeah, so there's many ways you can look at alignments and stuff. My kind of default is that if there's something that's interstellar, we should probably look at the constellation map, because that's now interstellar. So Western tropical astrology is clearly a very useful tool. It has a lot of baggage though, and I'm not sure I want to bring it into this. So in that context, the nodes are not in Virgo or Pisces, right? It's going to actually be shifted. So you would have to go, it would be back, because they're ahead. So like I'm a Virgo sun in Western tropical, but in reality, like I'm pumping that line Leo energy. So the nodes are right now in that Aquarius Leo axis, roughly. I mean, they're just kind of in that zone. It's close enough that you can kind of just play with all of it. But what we know, here's what we do know to keep it simple, because I don't want to mentally construct a chart right now.
Yeah, thanks.
Is that we know that Three-Eye Atlas came out of Sagittarius. That's where it was discovered, right? And it's actually the border of Capricorn and Sagittarius, and it's going to Jupiter. So it's doing that close flyby. Maybe it does an Oberth maneuver and says, hey, yo, I'm colonizing. We don't know. But either way, we know it's tracking across that part of the sky. Jupiter right now is near the, it's in Gemini, in true sky position, because it's in Cancer with Western Tropical. So you just go back to Gemini. So it's hanging out with the twins. So it's going to go through whatever that south node position is, in that Virgo, Leo zone, whatever, it's going through that. Now, what are the nodes? The nodes are where the moon's orbit, which is the same inclination as Three-Eye Atlas, 5 degrees. Three-Eye Atlas is coming like this. Our moon is 5 degrees inclined from the Earth. It's 5.15 degrees specifically. Interesting. A lot of interesting things like this, as you know. Where its orbit crosses the ecliptic plane is where you have the nodes, because that's where you get the eclipses. But you only get eclipses when the nodes line up, or rather the new moons and full moons line up with the nodes. So you have the moon crossing through the nodes twice, both north and south, ascending, descending, every lunar cycle, about 28 days. So they're always in play, but they're more significant when it just happens to line up that when the moon's going through that node, boom, it's a big full moon or something like that. But in the tradition, and so there's more to this too, because a lot of people talk Vedic astrology and sidereal, and they talk about that, how it's accurate to the sky positions. And it is more so like true sky, but it doesn't get the constellation sizes right. And it doesn't include a fucus. So it's like this kind of in-between child of like, oh, it does this. It's like the oldest, but true sky astrology is simply just where are the constellations and what are their sizes and what actually cuts through the ecliptic, which would include a fucus for like a very tiny sliver. So that's what I use to track the interstellar stuff, because it is what we need to look at, the actual environment. And it's a completely new field, basically, that very few people use. But the Vedics have a lot of ideas as to what the nodes are, the head and the tail of the dragon. There's a lot of symbology there, and fate, and you're doomed. Basically, all of Vedic astrology says you're doomed. Meanwhile, Western Tropical is also pretty doomy as well. Yeah, to be honest, but very fated stuff, and that's kind of is the deal with astrology. You learn this, but with Western Tropical, it's more about the North Node is like what you're going to, what you're embracing. The South Node is what you're leaving behind. So, Virgo, it can also be very hardworking, analytical, like workaholic, right? And how does work and stress and health connect together, right? Like that's been part of my journey. I've been working a lot and getting too stressed about things, and then like, oh, that created that problem, that problem, that problem. Now I need to do like, a more significant health modality to solve those problems, because my liver was super stressed out. And some other things contributed to that, like eating crazy mushrooms in Ukraine that were picked in the mountains, and I didn't cook them twice. You're supposed to cook them twice. I didn't know. But regardless, I think that was a contributing factor. But regardless, how can we let go what no longer serves us and embrace what does serve us? And so that South Node position is effectively speaking to that. And it is interesting that Atlas isn't crossing the North Node. It's crossing that South Node. So it's in opposition to the North Node, but I would say just by my assessment right now, just kind of thinking about it, it's really asking us, what is it that we can let go of that really expands us even beyond ourselves more? Because interstellar, intergalactic, we're talking scales so far beyond just our little bubble of consciousness. It's very humbling. So, and in general, it seems with spiritual belief systems and a lot of religions, it's all about letting go and releasing your ego. So that's also very much lining up and synchronistically agreeing with all these ancient traditions that we've kept alive and built on for thousands of years. It's not crossing the North Node. It's very interesting.
Hey there, inspired souls. If you want to know what's coming up for you personally at this time astrologically, you can book in a reading at amritsandhu.com/reading. You don't have to figure it out on your own. amritsandhu.com/reading, link in the description below. Back to the episode. Yeah, it's fascinating. Thank you for... And there's also, as you mentioned, it was a bit of a lull point for a moment there, but then you've got like A6 Lemon as well. You've got all these incredible, there's 3i Atlas, but then there's also like a lot going on at the moment in terms of objects flying through. Did you want to give us can you paint a picture for us in terms of some of the things that are happening all at the same time?
Yeah, so that it brings up two things. And the two main things is that it gives us context in a very real-time scenario as to the difference between 3i Atlas, which is Interstellar, and these comets. Because the comets, they have these high period orbits, but based off of their trajectory, they do loop back around. We can calculate, approximately, I put a pinch of salt on all this, but we can calculate approximately when it's going to come back. So for some of them, it's 100,000 years, right? Eventually, gravity will pull back in. So it's not really getting that far out on an interstellar scale. It's just in our kind of little local area, but it's going way out beyond Neptune and all these, it's going way out there, but it's not going 20,000 light years out or something. So they all have these really long tails, right? These comets fly in, they have tails, and there's dust behind them, and ice crystals and gas and ions, and they all pretty much have a pretty typical look and behavior to them. I mean, there's a lot of variation, but in general, it's all pretty standard stuff. A6 Lemon, for example, the one that you mentioned, viewable right now from the northern hemisphere, approaching its perihelion on November 7th.
Incredible tail. My God.
It is 60 times the length of the full moon in the sky. So the full moon is, I think it's 0.5 degrees across. I think that's what it is. So this tail is insanely huge. And 3i Atlas doesn't have one, right? Basically doesn't have one. I mean, if some of the observations show it having a very slight teardrop starting mid-August away from the sun. But before that, it was actually the opposite. It was facing the sun. So it's just been very bizarre. So it's providing that context of okay, this is especially odd. We can't really get around that. And people that are, I feel like they're doing a disservice. They're oh, it's just a comment. It's dude, you're just ignoring some of the obvious stuff. Do better. Just be better. Come on. But maybe they're trying to let go. I don't know. So I feel like I'm just hard on people sometimes. But I'm also hard on myself. I recognize that. Totally. But the other thing too is, this is odd. If you plot a lot of the comets in our inner solar system and outer solar system, just in general, all the things that are kind of flying around that we've identified, and we don't know their sizes, some are big, some are small, but whatever. You can plot 15 of these, 20 of these. You see them all close in to the inner solar system right now, and then they all pulse away going into next year. So, I mean, some of them are well above, some are well below, but just without, getting too deep in it, right, and too much in the weeds, just they're all close in, and then it's like a breath, this breath out, like this, and by the middle of next year, there's only one comet that's flying in at that time. I think it's Pan-STARRS or something. But even then, it's not getting that close. They all just kind of pull out. How does that change if you go to level 2, right? Gravity, probably not much. Electromagnetism, right? All those are little electromagnetic nodes. You create a whole bunch of new little circuits in the solar system, and nodal points too. You can have them in between the planets. And now you have maybe a greater nodal connection between Venus and Earth, or Jupiter or Mercury or whatever, right? That's interesting. I've never thought of that until just now. But you have greater information communication, I would think, and energy transmission between them. We already know that, for example, Jupiter, has this very big magnetic field, has these radiation belts that are very strong. It emits what's known as Jovian flux. These are high energy electrons that it just spews out everywhere in the solar system. And every 13 months, based off of our rotation around the sun, and Jupiter also with its 12-year orbit moving a little bit through the sky, every 13 months we get a burst of Jovian flux. And they have a very characteristic spectra, which means that their energy range is very tight because, you know, the engine, you could say, of the radiation belts is pretty finely tuned. It's not, you know, it's not sometimes a Volkswagen Bug and other times a Corvette. It's like, it's Jupiter. So it has this, what's known as a hard spectrum. And so we detect this pulse every 13 months. We also do know that Saturn has enough energy to pump some stuff out too, but it's nothing like Jupiter. And then we haven't observed any of this with Uranus or Neptune, though there are other things that they have like auroral radio emissions, which Earth has as well at different frequency ranges, whatever. So this is one example, like Jovian flux is one example about how one planet at least can like directly energetically influence another. But there's probably all these other mechanisms that we really don't know, and we don't have ways to track or measure or observe whatever yet that exist. And so these comets could be these linking energy connectors. At least I would, just based off of this kind of plasma cosmology understanding that's really pioneered by Birkeland and Alvin, then that seems pretty likely to me. And then you add in the deeper resonance level, right? So while you have this interstellar object coming in, the biggest of the three that we've observed during solar maximum, the peak of solar maximum, Oumuamua was the very tail end of maximum in 24, and it was a weak solar maximum. Bottom of a Gleisberg cycle, it's like a 100-year variation in solar activity, bottom of that. And then Borisov in 2019 came in the dead of solar minimum, so nothing happened. It was pretty much like, you know, yo, I'm cool, but I'm also pretty boring as it relates to things. Oumuamua was interesting, and 3i Atlas is crazy, right? But we love you, Borisov. Thanks for keeping it real. But, you know, this is coming in at a very crazy time, and then you have this, like, from our own system, but the outer reaches, you also have this whole like fleet of comets coming in that then pulse out. It's just interesting, like the informational level for that, right? Not only are we giving this really big interstellar or even like galactic influence and influx of energy from 3i Atlas, and also you can add the other two in as well if you want. But we're also getting from our own furthest reaches. Sedna's nearly at perihelion, right? The small TNO, trans-Newtonian dwarf object Sedna's is perihelion, 2076. They discovered another one, which is even longer of an orbit that's near perihelion, like within a decade of Sedna. There's an Eris is also pretty close to this perihelion. It's a 507 or 12-year orbit. Like, you know, there's a lot of interesting things happening right now. Big influx of energy just across the board, but we have to keep in mind, keep it grounded. We haven't been tracking this stuff for that long. If we had 10,000 years of the past, maybe we find that there were other spikes that were really crazy too, and this is actually, maybe it's not notable on a 1,000 year time frame. Maybe it is. Maybe it's notable on a 10,000 year, maybe it's notable on a 100 year. We don't know, right? But what matters is the present and the now. So seems to be pretty crazy to me right now, so I'll go with that.
Inspired soul living beings, you're obviously enjoying this video, so please do take a moment to give this video a thumbs up and a like, just to affirm your positivity behind the video. And also, we'd love for you to join in on the conversation below. Stefan reads his YouTube comments, I read my YouTube comments. We'd love to get involved and hear from you. What are you taking away from today's conversation? What are your thoughts on what this interstellar object really is and what it's up to? Back to the episode. Yeah, it's fascinating because obviously, I think living in our day-to-day, we forget that we didn't have, to your point, the fidelity on the tools that we now currently have, and stuff like this might have been happening. It did get me to reflect. One of the questions I had today coming into the podcast was a bit more esoteric in its nature, which was, you know, like, because there's like, you got Hopi tradition, you got ancient traditions talking about this time that we're in, like there's even biblical references, and it's interesting because it's like, then you feel all this stuff come up, but to your point, also we've got to try and remain grounded because, like, hey, a bunch of stuff is happening right now, yes, and also could have happened in the past as well in terms of, you know, all this, but we just didn't have the awareness to tune into it. Which, yeah, I mean, I always get into a slippery slope personally in this part of the conversation because, yeah, like even with something as like astrology and just using Western as a tool for a quick sec. But like Saturn was as far as our eye could see. And it was only like the last few hundred years that we started to bring online, like we started to be able to observe Uranus and then Pluto. And I'm like, chicken or egg, like, were these planets already influencing us before we were aware of them? But then once they're in our awareness, they influence us more. And like, it's not just that like I'm aware of Pluto, but like transformation, like you can see someone's transit and it goes, oh wow, like they really felt the birth of that hit them at that point. It's, yeah, I get a bit lost here. It's like in terms of, you never know whether it's chicken or egg, I guess, is probably why. But it is fascinating to think about. Yeah, just the question I had was around like ancient cultures and potentially some of them like prophesizing times and sort of feeling into, where we are whilst also trying to remain grounded, which I guess you've just spoken to there.
Yeah, I think there's more wisdom probably with the ancient traditions and what they've stored and saved, even though it's fairly limited now, than a lot of what we take to be awesome. Like I think the depth of wisdom is greater because it's speaking of experiences that go beyond our understanding. I mean, like the Younger Dryas impact, for example. Why do they have these big caves in Turkey, right? And also, Randall Carlson just gave me a shout out on his channel because he got tuned on to the 3i Atlas story and he watched one of my videos and where I was talking about the solar flares being aimed at 3i Atlas effectively, coincidence or not, whatever. He's really into tracking comets and this comet impact hypothesis for the Younger Dryas catastrophe, basically 12 to 14,000 years ago. And that got me thinking as well. We started like pinging off each other, not directly. I did meet him at Cosmic Summit, but just like his idea pinged my idea back and forth, and how if these things are triggering solar activity, if we did have a big comet come in 12, 14,000 years ago, let's say, and maybe it fractured up, it probably would have also triggered a lot of solar activity. And that's the idea with Robert Schoch. And he's like just on the solar hypothesis. And Randall, I think he's a bit more open, but he's very much more invested in the comet impact hypothesis, as well as some other people in that field. And I'm like, it's probably all the things. The more I research into it, the more it's like, it's all the things. So here's the thing. 12, 14,000 years ago, we would have seen this and we would have done our absolute best to record this because, I mean, how insane would that be to see like, like flying in, you're like, holy, like, and then the impacts and like, I mean, and then the long-term consequences of that, huge burn mats across a lot of North America from the fires and the impact. And we've lived through some crazy stuff where, people are like, this is the craziest humanity has ever had it. And it's like, again, 1458 to 1459 volcanic winter, folks. I think I would take now over then. Black Plague? I don't want to sign up for that. We've gone through a lot of insane things. And honestly, I feel like we're watered down nowadays compared to then, though it's all relative. But this is all experience that we've lived through. There was a huge population bottleneck like 60,000 years ago. They think that was from the super eruption of Toba, right? That's like kind of in your neck of the woods in Indonesia nearby. So, and I guess the population contracted to like less than 10,000 people. That's the current estimate. So like, yeah, we've lived through some absolutely insane stuff. And there's a lot of wisdom in that. So I think that, but it's in that like Akashic record Schumann resonance field. The Hopi have done a good job. I feel like just, when I read that Hopi prophecy, it just like resonates. And when you read about Steiner, he had ideas about souls and consciousness and how, like the Native Americans, for example, probably reincarnated as the white people that then took them over. Or a lot of Native Americans would have gone to India. So he talks about this kind of flow. So like, I don't have any Native American in me, right? Like I'm not any genetically Native American at all, but like I feel it for sure. Like there was certainly some Native American part because I am technically Native American having been born natively to America. But there's that. So when I read that Hopi prophecy, you know, I don't need to be Hopi for that to resonate with me, because it could be a past life. And I think a lot of people read that and it resonates because we all experience that. And they were just record keepers for the world of some of the things that happened and what they foresaw happening. And they have great record keeping too with the Aborigines in Australia. And I'm sure you know a lot about that. So yeah, it certainly seems that we're building to something. But it's hard to say. It really is hard to say, because again, you look at 1458 and some of this other stuff. I don't think that takes away from it though. There's just always, you know, life continues on. So
a lot of this episode thus far has been dedicated to what function 3i Atlas is serving as it's moving through our solar system. You touched on a few things for yourself that were coming up at this time, just, you know, what it's meant to you and how you're working with it, in terms of like a 6-day fast and that popped in for you, bit of releasing the old, you know, and sudden shifts and changes happening. I think some of the people in the audience will probably, you know, the other thing I'm taking away also is like watch for any O-birth maneuvers. That's should anything, you know, start to get a bit, then, you know, quickly phone Stefan again, what just happened. But yeah, for the most part, in terms of the individual tuning in that wants to, yeah, any sort of recommendations at this sort of time, like, yeah, a couple of things like that, that they ought to be sort of tuning into to support them on their journey as this is happening at this time?
Yeah, I can only speak my own personal experience, but my trust, like, learn what your intuition is. And I've found that your spirit is kind of quiet, but it's whispering all the time. So when some of these other thoughts may pop in, it may be kind of forceful and sudden, and then it may fade off pretty quick. But if, like, you shouldn't be reaching for that cupcake, like, again, your spirit's going to keep whispering to you, be like, really? Like, it's not, it's also going to be like, you know, eventually I'll figure it out. So it's not like screaming at you, but it's like, really? And you just kind of know. And then I'll share this experience with, I mean, I have no problem sharing anything really, but this will be interesting. So basically what I discovered is this whole connection between the liver and bile and small intestinal bacterial overgrowth and gut health and parasites and all these things. And so the liver is super important. Make sure you take care of your liver. I think the liver's under assault nowadays with like the plastics and with all the pharmaceuticals and the forever chemicals and all this stuff. So, you know, the fast specifically, if you do like a 5, 6, 7 day fast, your liver will like shrink 50%, clear out, and then completely regenerate. It's insane. It is the organ with the greatest regenerative capability. That's probably alongside also the small intestine, large intestine, because they can have a cellular turnover of 20% in a day. So 5 days, you have a complete cellular turnover, so long as there's nothing really disturbing that. And eating's inflammatory. So that's just like the quick boom, 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 there you go. Okay. Well, yep. I was like, okay, how do I break the fast? Because, you know, after 3 days, you go into ketosis, then your hunger goes away, you're feeling good, but I had to fly out to Florida, so I broke it a day early. I was going to do 7 days, but Spirit said 6. Don't get egotistical about this. Don't let it flip the other way, right? So I'm looking into it, and I read this, and I like reading actual people, not just like these AI articles. So I go to forums, right? And I read someone say, I break my fast with eggs. I do 2 to 4 eggs 3 times that first day. It's like, that's interesting. I know eggs are good for me, right? And I know a lot of the stuff in eggs and the science, whatever, right? But sometimes you don't know. And then I read that, and my kitchen light started flickering. And this light has never flickered before. I mean, maybe once or something, but it's like, I was like, what the heck is this, right? So then I'm like, is it the comet? And I read that comment again, and it's like 2 to 4 eggs 3 times on the first day. And then it's like, the kitchen light flickers a second time. Because in that and when I was reading it the second time, I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to do that. That makes sense. And then it did that whole flicker thing. And so here's the thing, you know, I talked about the liver, right? And I was having insufficient bile production. Well, and there's also like a whole energetic component to this, which is beyond the topic of this conversation. You know, Eileen McCusick, she's been helping me kind of discover some of this stuff with biofield tuning and more. Big shout out to Eileen, she's amazing.
We'll put a link to
and-
some of her stuff in as well. We did an
Yeah.
episode with her recently. Please continue.
Yeah, and you're helping her out as well, doing some coaching and stuff. So that's cool. We got a little triangle going on. But eggs have a lot of cholesterol and they have a lot of choline. And guess what you need for bile, right? To produce bile, you need a lot of cholesterol and a lot of choline. So I went that extra step and I kind of knew this stuff, so I was able to put it together. But just a light flickering can be enough, right? You don't have to always know something. But I kind of knew this stuff. I did one extra little step and I was like, oh yeah, okay. Now it all makes sense. And it is nice to get that secondary confirmation. And so now you have a synchronicity. And these things are more common during solar max. Maybe they're more common during interstellar transits. I don't know, right? But if you follow the breadcrumb trail and you give yourself some grace, because sometimes you do reach for the extra muffin. So you don't want to add shame to that because that makes it worse, right? Just then pay attention. Everything is just observational. Pay attention to what happens because everything's a learning opportunity. So if you grab the extra muffin, I grabbed 5 muffins a few days ago and I learned a lot from it, okay? So, but they were great. They were these pumpkin muffins I made. But, you just have to stay in the observational space because then you get a bigger signal. Whereas if you didn't grab the extra muffin, you wouldn't have as much experience to know why maybe you should be more careful with muffins in the future for using them as an example. So you don't have to attach any shame or guilt to this. Just like, okay, maybe I didn't listen to my intuition there. Now let's just observe, see what happens, gather the data, and feel the truth of it. That way, when maybe that other little thought in my brain that's actually connected to something in here is saying like, grab that muffin, right? You're like, well, actually, that's not going to help me. It's going to help you. And therefore, I'm not going to do it anymore. So all these things are connected. And I think there's this beautiful symphony of energy that's coming together to help us. And this is just one small domain, health and wellness. But if you can refine your own health and create this abundant wellspring of health, then you can share that with others. Your mental state becomes clear, your connection to spirit gets stronger, you get this full chakra alignment, right? You're so much more impactful in the world. You liberate yourself, self-actualize. You can start pursuing your creativity, your passion, take the jump off the cliff that actually sets you free and helps you fly, right? And if we're all going to do this together, that's what we have to do. So that's one small little domain. We're going to see this reflect across a whole bunch of different areas as well. But it's all happening simultaneously. It's a really beautiful process. Pam Gregory does a lot of talking about the metamorphosis of humanity right now. And I think that's a very apt way to describe it, and how we're in the chrysalis. And I think that's pretty spot on. But maybe this is going to be a 20-year chrysalis. Like how sudden can it be, and what's the catalyst going to be? I feel like there also needs to be a strong catalyst. And not just like a flyby of this thing. Maybe it's putting energy into the field, but some sort of earthly catalyst I feel like maybe needed to really trigger this. And I think a lot of people are seeing 3i Atlas as being the catalyst because it does the Oberth maneuver and now it's here on Earth. Maybe it does that. I think it's just loading, my intuition, my feeling is just loading the field of energy, information, and a lot of benevolent consciousness that's like, guys, you got this, I love you. And then something here, societally, maybe Earth-based, I don't know, there's usually got to be some sort of catalyst for like things to like crystallize. So we'll find out.
Watch this space. Stefan Burns. Brother Bear. So much love and gratitude, as always, for you carving out the time and energy to be here with us, but also just for you and your being. I mean, geophysicist means and the astrological awareness, and then also the astrology. I mean, yeah, the parts of the soup that make you up, we absolutely adore and love. So thank you so much, brother, for coming on today, and also so much for sharing yourself so abundantly here with us again and again, and just being yourself. Really, really appreciate it, brother. Appreciate you so much.
Thanks. And yeah, I love the space that you have here. There was a a gentleman, an Italian guy who speaks about consciousness that I got turned on to. What's his name? He was a computer engineer with computer chips and everything.
Oh,
I'm
yes.
blanking on his
Federico
name right now.
Fagin. Yeah, we've had him on the podcast. Incredible man. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm like, I just got turned on a little bit. He has some other like things that he's done. And then I was like, you know what? I bet Amrit has a podcast with him. And so I typed it up, and oh my God. And that was the podcast I wanted, because the other guy was a little bit more, he was like German. And like, no, I love the Germans, but he was thinking a lot more like just kind of from a logical perspective. And not that you don't have that as well, but like you just have a very open space that you create. And it's also expanding beyond some of the limitations that other people just like self-impose. So it's like, that exists. It's happened. It's happened. Like, it's there. So that was awesome. And so, there's a lot of experiences like that. And I'm sure your audience has had an unbelievable amount. So you're doing the world a lot of good too. And thankful that you're here and for holding a space, and we'll do it again, I'm sure.
Touch wood. Thank you so much, brother. Yeah, it's a trippy mix being such a grounded engineer for 15 years and then also being raised Indian and, so much mysticism and spirituality infused into it. But it makes the quirky part of me, good old little Amrit, who he is, man. Appreciate you so much. And looking forward to more updates. And like I said, for everybody tuning in at this point, there are consistent updates coming up on Stefan's channel as well. Really great. If I had to recommend a source, people are asking me questions a lot. If I had to recommend a source, that's my go-to resource. I'll put a link to it in the show notes below. Also, for those that don't know, Stefan is now also on Spotify as well. You guys can check out the channel there as well. And one of the cool things that I've got on YouTube is I actually listen to a lot of stuff passively because I've got YouTube Premium, and I know not everybody has that luxury. Spotify actually gives you the opportunity to listen to stuff passively in the background as well. So just a couple of cool resources. Again, YouTube description, have a look in the podcast description below. Lots of good resources we'll put in there for you. Big love, everybody.
Excellent. Thanks so much, guys.
Yo, inspired soul human beings, you've made it through to the end of another incredible episode. It is such an honor to be your brother walking this path by your side. Thank you so much for your incredible love and support. To each and every one of you that have made it this far into the episode, you have enjoyed this video, so please do give it a thumbs up and a like. It really helps vote for positive content, spiritual content like this online. So please do give it a thumbs up. And to all of you that are subscribed to the channel, guys, thank you so much for your incredible love and support. We're on our way to 300,000 subscribers. I cannot believe that this is where we're at. Like, honestly, it is such a gift and an honor and a pleasure to be doing this work with you guys. It is a total co-creation. Thank you so much for your incredible support. And to all of you that haven't yet subscribed, I invite you in. Please do take a moment. As I'm saying the word subscribe, the button below is lighting up in the colors of the Inspired Evolution. Please do take a moment. Hit that subscribe button, hit the bell notification icon, join the community, join the movement, spreading love, positivity, and wisdom like this around the planet together. And actually, some of you think you are subscribed, but you're not. So please do take a moment to check. Hit that subscribe button, hit the bell notification icon. Thank you so much in advance for doing so. And as we're talking about community coming together, we have the Inspired Evolution Community Circle. The Inspired Circle is a really beautiful place where I step out of the way and you get to ask your questions directly of these guests. Stefan Burns is coming on to do an exclusive Q&A with you guys, and you guys get to ask your questions directly of Stefan, and guests like this every month. Pam, all these incredible guests that we get on the Inspired Evolution podcast, you have the opportunity to ask your own questions directly of them. Also, we guide meditations, we have community sharing circles, there's yoga, there's breathwork, there's a lot of cool stuff happening inside the community.